everybody, it's Professor Parish. Sorry if I'm a little quiet in this video. I'm a little under the weather recording this, and I apologize for it being so late on Sunday. But I wanted to go over the assignments for week 7 in English 109. Again, I apologize if I sound a little croupy. But I wanted to go ahead and get us started talking about the assignments. So I'm going to minimize myself right here. As I'm recording this, if you don't have week 6 completed, please make sure that you do by tonight, and I'll swap this over to student view. And alright, so I'm going to scroll down to week 7. There are 3 assignments that are due this week. The first, obviously, is our discussion forum for week 7. If you've not done the discussion forum for week 7 yet, which it's just starting, so the post will be due by Friday, and then the responses are due by Sunday, March 1st. So that's the discussion forum. It's pretty straightforward. We also have a 4th textbook activity. So everybody's been doing really good on the textbook activities so far, and I'm really happy with how you've done. The 4th is just going to be straight from our book. It's not going to be, I'll go ahead and open it up for y'all, and we can look at it. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the compare and contrast drop box for the writing prep, and I want to go over the writing prep. The reading assignments this week are Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is extremely short. It's only 9 pages, so that's probably the shortest chapter we've had so far in the class. And then Chapter 18 is specifically on compare and contrast. So if you have not written a compare and contrast paper before, definitely check out Chapter 18 because it has some good suggestions and talks really well about what is expected of this paper. So textbook activity 4, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here. The Dropbox is right here where you upload the file. Go back. I hate when it does this. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yep. All right. So for textbook activity 4, this just takes place on page 114 and 116 in your textbook. 1 through 5 on page 115. You're just rewriting the sentences, but where it's underlined, I want some specifics. So this section is all about adding specific details. Because I could say at the shopping center we visited several stores. That could be anything. If you go to Carbondale Mall or Paducah or Evansville, there's a lot of stores there, so that's really broad. So I want to know specifically, where did you go? And this can be 2, 3, however many you think is necessary to show several. Definitely more than 2. Sunday is my day to take care of chores. What are those chores? And then some of these aren't underlined, but you can kind of catch the gist. Various activities. What are those various activities? What homework? Several films. And then on page 116, it kind of carries on and does the same thing for these 5. A variety of intramural sports. What sports? Are we talking Quidditch? Are we talking football, soccer? The animal ran away. What was the animal? An accident occurred. What was the accident? The instructor came into the room. What instructor? What room? Electronic gadgets. What is Louis interested in? So you can kind of get the idea of how you're going to rewrite and add details to those sentences. And then the last part here is, it seems pretty straightforward, but I want to talk about combining sentences and editing, because it seems like it's very easy to combine sentences. You just add a comma or a semicolon or a conjunction. But what I want you to do here is you're given 3 sentences, and I want you to combine them into one. And you're going to notice that there are some words that repeat. Like he, in both of these 2 sentences, is referring to Alexander Hamilton. So when you combine these sentences, do you have to include he, since you already know who it is? No, so you can cut that word out. You can make a list and you can cut out the he. So this is going to be an exercise, as it says in our directions, to cut repetitive or unnecessary words, use proper commas and punctuation, and make the sentence as fluid as possible. And so that's kind of the goal there, and you've got 5 examples of how you can do that. So, it's a pretty straightforward assignment this week. It's just adding details where they're needed and cutting unnecessary details where it's needed. And that's sort of the focus of the textbook activity this week. Now, I want to talk about the compare and contrast drop box. I kind of previewed compare and contrast in week 6. For the writing prep, I want to clarify that the writing prep and the paper are two separate things, and we do them back to back. So in week 6, I introduced that our new paper was going to be compare and contrast. This week, you're going to tell me what your topic is, what's the purpose of your paper, and then give me an outline showing me your points or the structure of your paper. And in chapter 18, they go over two specific types of structures for compare and contrast. They're subject by subject and point by point. And in subject by subject, usually you have two subjects. You talk about one subject first and then the other subject. And then at the end, you compare and contrast them and say which one you think is better. Point by point, you list the points of your paper, and with each point you talk about your two topics. So for example, if I'm comparing apples and oranges and my points are texture, color, and taste, then in a point by point structure I'm going to talk about texture first, and in that one subject I'm going to talk about the differences and similarities between apples and oranges. Then I'm going to talk about color, the similarities and differences between apples and oranges. And then with taste, I'm going to talk about apples and oranges. So with each point, I'm comparing both of the topics at the same time. With subject by subject, I would talk about everything with apples and then everything with oranges, and then I would come back and talk about how they're similar, different, and which I think is better. Now, your question may be, which format should I go with my paper? Should I compare and contrast subject by subject, or should I compare and contrast point by point? That's really up to you. I've seen great compare and contrast papers that utilize both styles and both types of outlines. It's really a matter of what works best for your topic. So I'm not looking for a draft yet. I just want to see what you're talking about, what your structure is going to be, and what your points are going to be. So I want to know your subjects, your points, and how you're going to organize your paper. And this is to give you an outline and a framework. And then next week, in week 8, that is going to be, week 8 is our midterm, and that is going to be when your compare and contrast draft is due. Okay, so you've got really 2 weeks to work on it at this point. It's only 3 pages. Don't worry. I know some people with the cause and effect, they were like, man, I'm really stretching this. But honestly, since you're talking about 2 separate things in compare and contrast, I think as you get to writing, you're going to find that it's a lot easier to get that 3 to 5 pages with this type of paper. So that's what I'm looking for this week. Also, I'll go back to assignments here with the assignment list. I don't know if it's listed here or not, but that's why you're watching these videos, right? I mentioned this on the revision outline that's in our resources, but let me backtrack here. I'm not sure if it's listed in our assignments or not, but if you choose to revise paper 1, those revisions are due Sunday, March 1st. Now keep in mind, as I've said in earlier weeks, cause and effect revisions are due by Sunday night of week 7. As I said in last week's video, if you did not turn in a cause and effect paper at its original due date, you cannot revise. That's just how it works in this class. But if you did turn in a paper, if you got an A or B on the first paper, I wouldn't worry about it. But if you got a C, I would say try to revise. I've given you some feedback. Just try to revise and do the best that you can to get a better grade for that paper if you got a C or below. But like I said, you have to submit an original draft on the due date in order to get the chance to revise it. So that is what's due this week. I'll real quick go to the discussion forum and show you all what week 7 is. Next week, week 8 will be a little bit different since it's midterm. So that video, stay tuned for it. I will hopefully have it out before Sunday night to give you a little bit more time to work with it. But week 7, since we're doing compare and contrast, I'm a big English nerd, and so I really like when people get on kind of like controversial tangents with media and things in pop culture, and this is a pretty fun one. So basically what this person has done is The Lion King, we recently, I mean, the animated version came out in the 90s. We recently had the live action remake. Someone compared The Lion King from the 1990s to this 1970s Japanese animated show called Kimba the White Lion. And automatically you can say, oh, Kimba, that rhymes with Simba, who's the main character in The Lion King. And there's, the video points out some interesting similarities and differences, but I want you to watch that video and then come back here and answer these questions. So, question number one, you can read it there. It's pretty self-explanatory. The Lion King itself, Disney's Lion King, takes a lot of influence from Hamlet. You will notice a lot of modern fiction goes back to Shakespeare and some classic Greek storytelling, which I think is fascinating. But why do you think that Shakespeare's Hamlet being copied isn't considered copyright infringement when the TV show Kimba is thought to be? So I'm curious to what you think about that. And then can you think of any other examples that are similar to this whole Kimba versus Lion King debate? And then list your examples there. So some interesting things there. I think you'll have a lot of fun watching this video. I'm curious to hear what you all have said. So far, the week 6 discussion forum post, I know I didn't get a post out in response, but I've read everybody's posts. They're all really good. So I will be very anxious to see what you all put for week 7. So that's our video this week. If you have any questions, please let me know. Please feel free to email me. Keep up to date. I will be in and out of my office this week, so email is probably the best way to get a hold of me. But if you need to come in the afternoons, I may or may not be available, so just check in with me before you make the trip out to campus or stop by my office. All right. I hope you all had a great weekend and have a wonderful week here to come. And I'll talk to you all again soon. Okay?